Welcome to the Bermuda Triangle. These are sea stories in the series of maritime history presented by Ken Rossignol. Look for more soon on the most successful pirate of the Caribbean, pirate trials, RMS Titanic, the greatest story ever told about ocean liners, and the history of the Panama Canal. Myths and facts of the Bermuda Triangle. For 150 years or more of disappearing boats, schooners, yachts, ships, and planes, gas eruptions of ocean bottoms, in other words known as ocean flatulence, fantasy, fact, or fiction, or maybe all of it. The transom tells part of the story of how ships go down. The rust through the hull, the fittings fail, the wooden planks fail, the gross mistakes made by captains. Salt, it, it has a very real effect on ships. So it was a dark and stormy night. Yeah, storms. They have a lot to do with it too. The stern of the shrimp boat shown here shows the wear and tear. And will it get the maintenance it needs during this season? No, who knows? That's heavy equipment that it's carrying. Deferred maintenance means a lot. A hole in the sea, a swirling vortex in the ocean. The official Bermuda Triangle. If you're on a cruise, they're going to show you where you're going on your TV and a tracking chart in your stateroom. And they're going to show you where they want to tell you they're going. When you're in a triangle, this is likely the course that your ship will be taking. They're just going to lie to you. Besides, they have to stretch it out a little bit. It only takes like a day to get to someplace. They'll say have 3 sea days, so you'll spend more time in the casino. So the Bermuda Triangle, it's the Devil's Triangle. It's a triangular area in the Atlantic Ocean bounded roughly at its points by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Legend has it that many people, ships, and planes have mysteriously vanished in this area. How many people disappeared? Depends on who's doing the locating and the counting. So the Bermuda Triangle, how big an area really is it? Some include the Azores, the Gulf of Mexico, and the West Indies in the triangle. Some trace the mystery back to the time of Columbus. Even so, estimates range from about 200 to no more than 1,000 incidents in the past 500 years. One of the most recent examples was the loss of the Bounty during Hurricane Sandy. The captain went down with the ship. A captain of a sailboat at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay called for the Coast Guard 2 weeks ago to rescue him, his wife, and 2 pets. All they had to do was monitor the weather. And this photo shows the Kalmar nickel. The captain ignored weather warnings of gale force winds, and the Coast Guard inspection should have sidelined this vessel in port. 3 people died unnecessarily. The captain went out in gale force winds. This is one of the actual fasteners from the El Toro 2, which showed that it was just disintegrating. As a result, the Coast Guard banned wooden boats for taking more than 6 people out at a time. 3 people died from being of hypothermia after being in the ice water for 3 hours. The wrecked charter boat was later repaired and put back into service. Unbelievable. So this marked the end of the wooden headboat carrying more than 6 passengers. There it is, the El Toro 2. This lady lost her husband. He was uh, a hero of the El Toro disaster. Eddie Phillips at the right there, he's a mate on the headboat, and he lost his life. This is the cargo ship El Faro. It sailed directly into the path of the very well-forecast Hurricane Jaquan from Jacksonville, Florida on September 30th, 2015. See, it left port sailing directly into the hurricane. Unbelievable. They had winds at that point of 70 miles per hour. Heavily loaded container ship. And it was in the Bermuda Triangle. They later found the ship on the bottom. There's a picture taken by the United States Navy on January 11th of 2015. They went down with all hands on board. So, truth or ghost story? Here is a photo from inside of a Coast Guard helicopter hoisting up a sick passenger from a cruise ship off the coast of Cape Hatteras in North Carolina. This is a task conducted almost every day on both the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific coast, and the Atlantic coast by the Coast Guard. Disappearing aircraft of all types. Incredible. It's the graveyard of the Atlantic, home to some of the deepest underwater trenches in the world. The wreckage could settle in a watery grave miles below the surface of the ocean. Most of the seafloor in the Bermuda Triangle is about 19,000 feet deep. Near its southern tip, the Puerto Rico Trench dips at one point to 27,500 feet below sea level. Treacherous shoals and reefs can be found along the continental shelf. Strong currents over the reefs constantly breed new navigational hazards. The nickname for the Bermuda Triangle is the Devil's Sea. So we have flying saucers, spaceships, ET, evil extraterrestrials. There's a lot of reports of UFOs from U.S. Navy sailors and ships at sea. It could be a leftover residual crystals from Atlantis, evil humans with anti-gravity devices or other weird technologies, vile vortices from the fourth dimension are favorite among fantasy writers. So a biggest weather and a factor in a region is a hurricane. Hurricanes usually aren't spawned in this region. They come there from the west coast of Africa, and they come through and then they just plow away. The Gulf Stream itself is like a 40 to 50 mile wide river within the ocean. It circulates from the Gulf of Mexico up to the North Atlantic Ocean. And then there's rogue waves and water spouts. So the warm water and 2 to 4 knot currents in the Gulf Stream can create weather patterns that remain channeled within it. Under the right conditions, wave heights in the area could be immense. Clouds and thunderstorms follow the Gulf Stream. Coast Guard notes that unpredictable Caribbean and Atlantic storms can yield waterspouts that often spell disaster for pilots. So what's behind this sinister history? Bloodthirsty pirates, explosive cargoes, incompetent navigators, like the Costa Concordia, 32 people killed there, within the Bermuda Triangle, strange magnetic fields and oceanic flatulence, methane gas coming from the bottom of the ocean, causing a big bubble to come up through the ocean and tip over a boat. They're favorites. Of course, the thunderstorms, the weather, tsunamis, earthquakes, high waves, and bad luck. And the hand of the devil reaches up from the sea to grab a ship. And this photo taken of the hand of the devil coming up out of the sea right next to Bermuda, otherwise known as the reefs. They're very dangerous reefs navigating for ships going into Bermuda. They have to have somebody that really knows their way around. Then we have the disappearance of the Golden Eagle. An account in the Otago Daily Times on Wednesday, the 21st September 2011, says an experienced New Zealand sailor and a colleague went missing after their yacht disappeared between Bermuda and Ireland. The Golden Eagle has not been heard from since. It left Bermuda on August 21st of that year. It was due to arrive in Crookhaven, South Ireland, on September 15th. Has anybody seen the Golden Eagle? There was a 60-year-old New Zealand man who lives in the Caribbean and a 69-year-old Norwegian man who were on board. The Irish Coast Guard was notified on September 17th of that year by a rescue service in Norway that a friend of the Norwegian man reported the yacht overdue. How do yachts, boats, ships contact saying we need help? They use what's called the Marine Emergency Response System, provides immediate rescue services. There was some confusion as to whether or not the Golden Eagle was going to the Azores and then proceed on to Ireland or proceed directly to Ireland. It never turned up in the Azores, and it did have the emergency position indicating radio beacon on board, but it had not been activated. Vanished. The USS Cyclops. What a story. Vanished in the Bermuda Triangle during World War I. It was a 522-foot-long coal carrier and disappeared on a return trip to Baltimore from Brazil with a cargo of ore. It was thought to have defected to Germany due to pro-German sentiments of a U.S. diplomat on board and of the captain. Records searched after the war from Germany gave no clue. The USS Cyclops, here it is, shows a diagram of it and a photo of the vessel itself. There was a cloud of suspicion over the captain. On January 8, 1918, the Cyclops set sail from an ice-covered Norfolk Navy Yard with its load of coal to take to Brazil. When leaving Norfolk, she narrowly avoided a collision with the USS Survey, outward bound for the Mediterranean for patrol and anti-submarine duty. By nightfall, they had cleared the Virginia Capes and headed southward, going through the winter seas with a speed and ease amazing for a heavily loaded vessel. Captain Worley, he began to show anger to the crew. But by the fifth day out, things began to happen. Then he directed his anger at the timid Ensign Kane. The second officer interfered and ordered Kane, apparently in perfect health, to the infirmary to spare him any more of Worley's unreasonable anger. In spite of the warm Caribbean weather, Captain Worley became odd in manner and dress. I approached Captain Worley about the galley and the meals. The fish we had for dinner had not even been cleaned and smelled bad, said a crewman. Not a good start for food poisoning on a ship going to Brazil. Before the Board of Inquiry, a captain at Hampton Roads, Virginia, in August of 1917, some 40 seamen on board the USS Cyclops signed a petition against their captain, George W. Worley. The petition was started by one man, a hospital apprentice, and then circulated amongst the crew. The captain was loaded in every way. In this petition, the crew accused Worley of being so drunk that he fell in and out of doorways, staggered about the deck. They accused him of chasing Ensign J.J. Kane around the deck with a pistol in his hand. And the crew also reported odd happenings on board off France, recalling the fleet An unauthorized signal lamp had been strung up to the foremast and connected by a cord. One day the lifeboat lines on the Cyclops were found cut. On another day the gun scope lenses were found put in backwards. These were all acts that questioned the loyalty of some unknown hand on board the USS Cyclops during wartime. The frantic pace of war preparations in World War I brought undisciplined captains into the regular Navy. Lieutenant Commander Worley had also been a seaman most of his life. When the war started with Germany, he was automatically enlisted with a rank of command into the Navy. The Navy Auxiliary is full of such captains, merchant skippers who were placed into command positions as the need arose. Captain Worley claimed he wasn't drunk, he just added a jigger of liquor to his medicine to make the bitter taste go down. Worley told others that the Navy had treated him badly over this complaint, but cleared him. The Navy was nervous over complaints. The Cyclops should remain out of the war zone. That's why they sent it to Brazil. The Cyclops was to prepare for sea by early January, but she was to remain in the Americas. She was to steam to Rio de Janeiro to refuel the fleet there and pick up very valuable cargo in return, manganese ore, vital in the production of steel. Now, Flight 19. Very interesting. Is it confusion? Is a train flight turned into disaster? The legend of the Bermuda Triangle will be forever tied to the fateful flight that took place on December 5, 1945. Flight 19 originated at the U.S. Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers carried 14 men. Took off at roughly 2:10 in the afternoon that day on a routine navigational training mission. This is after the end of World War II. Led by instructor Charles Taylor, the assignment was to fly a three-legged triangle route with a few bombing practice runs over the hens and chicken shoals. An unidentified crew member asked Powers, one of the students, for his compass reading. Powers replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." Crackling heard as a flight of bombers drifted off of the airwaves, never to be seen again. F-28, this is FT-74. What's your trouble? Both of my compasses are out, Taylor replied. I'm flying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I don't know how far down. I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale. A Martin Mariner exploded while searching for Flight 19, compounding the tragedy. It disappeared with its 13-man crew. National Geographic reports that Lieutenant Taylor, in an age before the global positioning system became commonplace for navigation, got hopelessly lost shortly after the bombing run. Pilots flying over water in 1945 had to rely on compasses and knowing how long they'd been flying in a particular direction and at what speed. Both of the compasses on Taylor's planes were apparently malfunctioning. Transcripts of the in-flight communications suggested he wasn't wearing a watch. And one magazine author wrote, "Oh, there's no landmarks in the middle of the ocean." No kidding. The Navy Avengers. Planes flew in one direction, then another, as the balmy daylight turned into stormy seas. And as the level of fuel dipped below 10 gallons, all 5 planes were to ditch in the sea. Avenger was an extremely tough plane. The last words of Charles Taylor were, "Entering Whitewater, nothing seems right. We don't know where we are. The water is green, no white." What happened on Flight 19? The most logical theory is that they vanished because his compass failed. The trainees' planes were not equipped with working navigational instruments. The group is disoriented and simply, though tragically, ran out of fuel. No mysterious forces here, just planes without fuel. And the faulty gas tank was linked to the explosion of the Mariner. So there's malarkey spread by the mass media, authors who fail to question the fictional. In short, the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle became a mystery by a kind of communal reinforcement among uncritical authors, and a willing mass media to uncritically pass on a speculation that something mysterious is going on in the Atlantic. Similar phenomena for the Pacific was also written by fiction writers in what's called the Dragon's Triangle. Coast Guard is skeptical. They say that they collect and publish through their inquiries much documentation contradicting many of the incidents. And one such incident involved the 1972 explosion and sinking of the tanker SSVA Fog. The Coast Guard photographed the wreck and recovered several bodies. One author claimed that all the bodies had vanished, with the exception of the captain, who was found sitting in his cabin at his desk, clutching a coffee cup. In addition, SSVA Fog sank off the coast of where there was normally nowhere near the commonly accepted boundaries of the Bermuda Triangle. U.S. Navy Flight 441, the pilot of this flight, he'd been flying the North Atlantic routes for 2 years and thought that he was very familiar with this kind of weather. His choice of 17,000-foot altitude for this flight was a good one. According to the weather cross-section, 19,000 feet would have been even better. He should have been on top of any bad weather for the most part, except for the occasional bump in the clouds. He's an experienced pilot. He had the best electronics equipment of its time. The R-7 V1 was equipped with an ASP-42 airborne radar. It was always used when flying this sort of weather. The electronic shop at VR1 NAS Pax River labeled the radar set in R7V-1 BUN as very good. The pilots are indoctrinated in the correct use of the gear. But Flight 441 disappears. It left the Tucson River NAS on October 30th, Halloween, 1954, bound for Leger in the Azores. Communications with the flight follow the pattern, and the other loss is regular than nothing, as if it just erased off the earth or out of the skies. The last message was very faint, being picked up at 11:30 p.m. It was simply a follow-up routine position reports, precise coordinates were this roughly 400 miles off the coast of North America. Flight 441 is one of the most incredible disappearances, as no shred of evidence was ever located to tell the story, just without a trace. It was more poignant by her cargo manifest. It lists her basic cargo as 111 life vests, 46 exposure suits, 660 paper cups, and 5 life rafts. All of this is going to float. If she flew apart in midair, this would be scattered liberally across the ocean. If she ditched and went down, she also would have had time to send a message. The SS Sulphur Queen. It disappeared. Kind of big, did it just vanish. February 4th, 1863, with a unique cargo. It was the last one to hear from the Sulphur Queen was a stockbroker in Florida who took a call on February 4th, 1963, at 1:25 a.m. from a seaman on a ship-to-shore radio at 200 miles off the coast of Key West. The ship had been converted from an oil tanker to carrying uh, molten, volatile molten sulfur kept at 255 degrees. Several sister ships of the World War II era build of the New Haven had broken up during storms, but the section with the crew and superstructure remained floating. Not in this case. It operated up and down the Atlantic coast carrying hot sulfur from Beaumont, Texas, and had made 63 other round trips. It had been built as a New Haven during World War II, and in a remarkable 70 days that it was built. So hocus pocus, maybe. The Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines sent aircraft and ships to search a 350,000 square mile area of the ocean between Key West and Norfolk. Guess they wanted that boat. They never found anything. On February 19th, a Navy ship found a debris field with some items in the Sulphur Queen, including life jackets, one of which had teeth marks indicating a shark attack. A new search by 7 ships and 30 aircraft revealed no further items. Did it blow to Kingdom Come due to its cargo of molten sulfur? Did it capsize in a huge wave? Why were there no distress calls? And 3 other ships in the same class of construction had broken in half in storms over the decades, but each had a section continued to float. And distress calls were heard, and the crews were saved. Missing the presumed loss, the Germanic K, the Genesis, the May Doris, a fishing trawler from Cape May, New Jersey, disappeared in 1962. The Polymer II, a 65-foot custom yacht, disappeared after leaving Miami. Suspected and stolen by drug dealers, the crew and 5 passengers disappeared. The Intrepid, 72-footer from Port Pierce, Florida, vanished in 1996. The Dutch Treat vanished in 1975 off the coast of Florida. Witchcraft, missing since 1967. El Gato disappeared in 1965 on the way to Puerto Rico. High Flight. Weather is not a mystery. A typhoon ripped through Task Force 38 on December 18, 1944, as it supported the invasion of the Philippines. The U.S. destroyers USS Hull, Spence, and Monaghan capsized and sank. 28 other vessels were heavily damaged. 790 sailors were killed, 80 injured. This shows the USS Cowpens heaving in the huge seas. Fate magazine argues that the Bermuda Triangle is real. Lloyd's of London information, aside from being incredibly obsolete, is also a false comparative, says Fate magazine. The enigma of the Bermuda Triangle is that more ships and planes vanish in fair weather than in other seas. Lloyd's reported for Fate's edit that 428 vessels were reported missing between 1955 and 1975 around the world, and did not show a greater concentration than in the Triangle than anywhere else. Fair or foul facts solve the issue. So there's no breakdown on how many vessels and planes vanish in fair and foul weather. Since no one remotely understands the actual enigma, would even see the relevance in the number of the comparative must much less be between the number of vessels lost in fair weather. So decide for yourself, fact or fiction. Only the shadow knows for sure. Now, how do they figure out who Santa Claus was in the movie Miracle on 34th Street? They relied on the U.S. Post Office. So I say, rely on Lloyd's of London. I said no more vessels disappear or planes disappear in the Bermuda Triangle than anywhere else. So I think they would know. Trivia questions. What was the type of plane in Flight 19? What cargo did the USS Cyclops carry? Who was president of the United States during World War I? And who was president when Flight 441 vanished? The answers: 1. The Navy Avenger. 2. Cole. 3. Woodrow Wilson. 4. Dwight D. Eisenhower. That's it. Look for Titanic 1912, Panama 1914, and Wreck of the Whale Ship Essex at Amazon, all available in Kindle print and Audible. Thank you for watching.